full and you don't want to miss a second of it. So thank you for joining me. Of course, you can listen later on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, but here's what we have on deck for tonight. President Trump has awarded Charlie Kirk the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the highest civilian honor, and it is well-deserved. We're going to get into that. Also, CNN reporter Christiane Amanpour apologizes after making insensitive comments about the Israeli hostages having better treatment than people in Gaza. Also, all of the Democrats came out with statements on the ceasefire. Some of them thanked Trump, most didn't. Also, Alec Baldwin crashes his wife's Range Rover in East Hampton. He told his side of the story. Dash cam footage tells another side of the story. So we're going to watch it and we're going to go through it together. And we're going to get into the scrolling time that I had planned for you yesterday. We didn't get to. So all of that coming up on Nightly Scroll. President Trump has posthumously awarded Charlie Kirk the Presidential Medal of Freedom today, which would have been his 32nd birthday, which is just so tragic to think that he's just a few months older than I am. And the fact that he has gone so young and so soon and leaves his family behind. I know we all know this, but it's just so tragic to be reminded of just how young he was and how soon he was taken from us. And just to think of all of the things that he has done in his life and the impact that a 31-year-old had on this world is incredible. I mean, it is nothing short of a miracle what he was able to do with Turning Point USA, the movement that he started, and the movement that is going to continue thanks to everything that he put forth in his life. It's just really wonderful. And Erica Kirk, of course, his widow, attended the ceremony at the White House alongside national leaders, supporters, and received the award on Charlie's behalf. And President Trump spoke, obviously, at that ceremony. Here's what he had to say.
1 month after Charlie's death, we still feel the terrible shock and the pain of his loss, like just about nobody I can think of. Charlie Kirk was one of a kind. He was unstoppable. And he really was. Boy, when he had an idea in his head, he would call me, "Sir, please, you haven't done it yet." I said, "Charlie, relax. Just relax." He didn't relax. He'd call me the next day again. It got it done. But he was like indomitable and always will be. He's really irreplaceable. Nobody going to replace him. But they're going to do great. But you can't replace that kind of person and that kind of talent, frankly. The word talent is an important word, but that kind of talent. So we hold his memory in our hearts forever. Every single day of this administration, we will continue to carry out the mission for which he lived, and he really did. He lived for this country. He lived for his wife and his family, but he lived for this country too. In Charlie's honor, we will continue like we have been to fight, and to win. We're going to win so much.
Well, Charlie would have wanted that. So happy heavenly birthday to Charlie Kirk, 32 years old today, and his legacy certainly lives on. I think he'd be very stoked about the All-American halftime show that Turning Point USA is putting on and all of these events that are still taking place on college campuses. What he started is not going to be finished now that he is gone. It is just getting started. So I think everyone at Turning Point is making Charlie and Erica very proud. I also want to talk about the typhoon that hit Alaska, mostly because I was scrolling on TikTok last night and a lot of Alaska residents were coming up on my For You page and they were saying, no one's talking about this. No one in the mainstream media is talking about this. People are displaced and it's so horrible. And I thought, okay, well, fine. I'm in the new media. I'll talk about it. And it is tragic. One person has been found dead. 2 are missing still. In Western Alaska, a typhoon Hayley, brought hurricane force winds. A typhoon is a hurricane, but in that part of the region, that's what it's called. And there was storm surges, floodwaters, and people's homes were completely swept away. And Alaska State Troopers said that at least 51 people and 2 dogs were rescued in Kipnuk. And I'm going to botch this, but we literally looked up the pronunciation minutes before the show started. And of course, I'm going to ruin it. Quigillingok. Hopefully that suffices. But these are the 2 towns that have been completely ravaged by the storm. And obviously they saw this storm surge and now 1,000 people have been displaced in these towns, which is just horrible. We talked about, and the media covered so much, the floodwaters in Texas and the floodwaters in eastern Tennessee and western North Carolina that happened, and it just, I feel like this storm is not getting the same coverage that the other ones have, and they should. I mean, this is horrific, and certainly a loss of a life is horrible, right? In Texas and in in the South, there was more deaths, more destruction, longer to pick up the pieces, right? So maybe that has something to do with the fact that there was more media coverage, but certainly, we have to cover this when it hits any part of the country. And I just feel for, our fellow Americans there. It's just so tragic. So our prayers are with the fellow Americans who are struggling, and also with the first responders who are carrying out those rescue missions and, picking up the pieces, like I said. Also, an update from the Middle East. Of course, President of the United States yesterday signed a historic peace deal alongside Middle East leaders, announcing a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, also announcing the return of hostages on both sides. But this ceasefire between Israel and Hamas is fragile. The IDF said earlier today that troops opened fire on Palestinians and they killed 5 Palestinians after they say that these Palestinians violated terms of the ceasefire agreement. So the IDF said that several suspects were crossing this yellow line. They approached IDF troops in northern Gaza, and they said that this violates the agreement. The 5 people approached, and the IDF apparently tried to tell these people to put distance between them, to not come closer. These suspects refused to comply, and IDF soldiers opened fire on them and killed them. But, while President Trump, and not to mention, so the IDF says that a Palestinian civil defense spokesperson has denied that claim, saying that the 5 people that were killed were within the safe zone yellow area. So again, while President Trump and his team did an absolutely wonderful thing yesterday, this conflict has been going on for decades, right? These ceasefires have been broken before. So when President Trump signed it yesterday, he said, I hope this holds. I hope this holds. And I hope that we can usher in this golden era, this golden age in the Middle East of peace. And we do. We have to hope that happens. But both sides need to come to that agreement and agree to that and not kill the other side, right? So this is ongoing, and we will certainly be covering it. But CNN, in their coverage, has completely stepped in it. And they are known to do this when there's breaking news situations, when it's tragic. We saw in 2020, they cover these fiery but, quote, mostly peaceful protests where people are launching Molotov cocktails at police vehicles. They are launching Molotov cocktails at federal buildings. They are burning minority-owned businesses to the ground in cities across the country, in Minneapolis, in Seattle, in Portland, in New York, in Baltimore. I mean, we saw this all over, right? And of course, when CNN reports on it and there's flames behind the reporter, they say, it's mostly peaceful. Then, of course, you remember when the gunman went into the NFL headquarters in New York City. Aaron Burnett on CNN said it was a possibly white gunman, which I guess is true, right? He could have it was possible that he could have been white, but he wasn't. And when you're reporting on the news, you have to report what you know, and it's not your job to speculate, unless, of course, you're an opinion host like I am, but these people are not opinion hosts. So, you're reporting on a breaking news situation. It's just best to lay out the facts that you know in real time and not to kind of stray from the facts, because as we know, in a breaking news situation, a lot of things change. As everyone in the chat knows, it's best to hold and just wait to let all the facts come in before you speculate and before you add in your 2 cents. But CNN's Christiane Amanpour, she did not do that. She did not hold. as you're supposed to do. And she kind of injected her personal bias. Watch this. This is her actually,
now,
I'm sorry.
earlier
This is
live
her
on air, I spoke about
apologizing.
what a day of real joy this is for Israeli families whose loved ones are finally being returned from 2 years of horrific Hamas captivity, and for civilians in Gaza who finally had a reprieve from 2 years of brutal and deadly war. I noted that for the hostages who are finally home, it'll take a long time for them to recover mentally and physically. But I regret also saying that they might have been treated better than many Gazans because Hamas used these hostages as pawns and bargaining chips. But that was insensitive and it was wrong. From speaking to many former hostages and their families, like everyone, I've been horrified at what Hamas has subjected them to over 2 long years. They've told me, as you've just heard, their stories of barely being able to breathe in the tunnels, not being allowed to cry, being starved and made to dig their own graves. And of course, today, some of the hostages are coming back in body bags.
I mean, how insensitive do you have to be to say that the Israeli hostages were being treated well, or being, not well, but being treated better than Palestinians in Gaza? What? And then explaining how she spoke to the families of the hostages. They told her stories of how badly they were being treated, that they couldn't breathe, that they were being forced to dig their own graves. And then she goes on air and she says, oh, well, it wasn't, so bad. It was worse for other people. When to point out in her own apology that she recognizes that hostages were killed. So how is the death of one group of people worse than another, right? Like, death is death. How can you legitimately argue that as a reporter when you're supposed to be just laying out the facts on the ground? You're not supposed to inject your personal bias. Israeli hostages were starved and killed. Palestinians in Gaza were also starved and killed. Innocent souls. Okay, so X and Facebook, if you are here on X or Facebook, hello, welcome. Welcome to Nightly Scroll. I'm Hayley Caronia. If you want to watch the full show, because it's going to cut off at some point, you got to do it on Rumble. So rumble.com/Hayley is where you can watch Nightly Scroll in full, and you can watch it every weeknight, Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. So I hope you do. So if anyone new is watching tonight, welcome. Hello.